Wiggle, wiggle.
Like.
Saludos amigos, bienvenidos a una nueva edición del Calentón y hoy es un episodio de lujo porque no solo me encuentro haciendo un programa en vivo y obviamente con invitados especiales, sino que hoy tenemos leyendas que están promocionando un libro llamado The Bushwhackers Blood, Sweat and Shears. Lo puedes conseguir en Amazon y para presentar a mis invitados, John Carter, the author of the book of the Bushwhackers, and the legend, the 2015 Hall of Famer, Luke Williams, or as better known in Puerto Rico as part of the huge team Los Pastores. How is everything going?
Good, mate. Hang on, I've got a little problem here. Sorry.
Don't worry.
Okay, Carlos, everything is going good. And I've got that blood running through me now. I just want to get back into the Los Pastores days.
And John, I have a question for you first.
Yeah.
This book, we have seen in a lot of time many legends like Mick Foley, Ric Flair, and many others doing their biography. Chris Jericho has been one of the biggest one to have done several books. But how is your interest? Because I read and I knew that you are a comic book writer.
Yeah.
How is your interest specifically in so many legends, but specifically writing an autobiography about the Bushwhackers?
Well, as you know, you did a little bit of research. I've done comic book writing before this book. I've written for Heavy Metal Magazine, Antarctic Press, others, everything from superheroes to horror stories. And in the last 5 years, I've actually been writing wrestling biographies, everybody from Hacksaw Jim Duggan to Rocky Johnson to the Rock and Roll Express. And I hadn't actually written what I like to call a real book. And I was reached out to by Luke, because Luke here lives in Florida, not that far from me, and COVID had hit. And Luke asked if I'd be interested in actually writing the book, a real book on him and Butch. And heck, everybody was locked down. We had tons of time. I kind of got the courage up. I'd turned a couple guys down previously, just because, thinking about time constraints and everything. And I felt the time was perfect. And I had been a fan of Luke and Butch's from way before they became the Bushwhackers. I grew up on wrestling here in the state of Florida in the 1970s. And I remember in the 80s watching them come into the state as the sheep herders. As they stomped their way all over the state of Florida as heels, beating up everybody, left and right, from, Steve Kern and Mike Graham and all these guys. So it was fantastic to have an opportunity to tell the tale of two guys that have been in the business for so long and have set such an amazing mark on the industry, not only as WWE or WWF guys, but way before that, as hardcore guys. Wrestling in Puerto Rico, wrestling in Texas, wrestling in Canada, and all throughout Asia.
I have a question for Luke, specifically now that you mentioned the WWF run. The people that follow Los Pastores, the sheep herders, for many years, the team was known for their violence, for their hardcore wrestling, and all that. But when we saw the Bushwhackers, specifically in WWF, the tone of the character was completely different. That was an idea from you both, or was an idea of Vince McMahon trying to change in a little bit the character that you used to have?
Well, Carlos, Vince McMahon said to us, how would you like to be the good guys, baby faces? And then, I had been sending tapes and going way back to 83 to his dad, Betamax, when there was Betamax tapes, the big wide ones, and for years and years. And then, and finally they called us up and to come up there. And he said to us, as I just said, to be the good guys. But he said to us, I want you to be like the sheep herders, partly like the sheep herders and the Moondogs. and that, you know, and the Moondogs was the heel team, and of course the Sheepherders were a heel team. But he wants us to be baby faces. And Butch says to me, the Moondogs have been on USA Network for the last 5 or 6 years, and we've been on Ted Turner Network, TBS or TNT, for the last 8 or 10 years. And he says, let's do something different. So when we were Vince gave us the name, the Bushwhackers. Funny part is when it was sent to Butch, Butch called me up. He said, "Hey, they've sent us the wrong contracts. They sent these contracts to the Bushwhackers." And I said to Butch, "They want to change our name and own us. That's the reason why it's the Bushwhackers." He thought it wasn't for us. That's what I had to laugh at that, you know. But you know, of course, him owning the name for merchandise, he gets a major percentage of the money. So as heels, when heels, every time we went out the ring in arenas and in television, we would throw up our arms and go, "Whoa, yay," to try and scare the people, you know what I mean? So Butch said, let's turn it around. Let's throw our arms up in a marching way and march to the ring. And hence, we started doing that in the arenas, and all the fans started doing it. And hence, the Bushwhackers were made. People remember. They don't remember the wrestling matches, but they remember the two crazy, as Jesse Ventura say, "Here comes the marching morons."
Yeah, that became the trademark of the actual team in that WWF run, in a way that sometimes if you are just a WWF fan, you doesn't like remember the actual sheep herders big feuds, because you were really huge on the territories era, if I may call it that way. And I have a question, because you used to work on Portland, specifically in a feud with Roddy Piper and Martel, and that is one of the biggest feuds, I think, on the tag team scene in the territories. When that feud was happening and everything was clicking between the both teams, do you expect that feud will become so huge?
Never in my life would I thought that what happened would happen. But that was that I will say that feud went for 14 months, and in that feud we had 22 consecutive sellouts in the Portland arena. Portland arenas, we did Saturday night television, and I didn't know this till Roddy Piper 3 months before he died. He told me that, you know, because he lived in Portland, and he said that we had 22 consecutive sellouts. That was one hell of a run, you know. And not the world didn't know about that, because Portland is way up in the northwest, you know, way up in the corner. It's not centralized like all the other territories. It's a space way out of, you know, when you're up there, nobody knows you.
Yeah. Now I have a question for John, because you work two different type of art, or writing, because I saw a lot of your work in comics, but now in this time, specifically speaking about wrestling, you do, like you said, like a real book, a huge book about all this story, or all these 50 years of wrestling, of sweat, blood, tears, and shears also. How different is for you as a writer to work those both art, but at the same time speaking about wrestling? Because I saw some of the comic wrestling books that you have on your page on Facebook, but now when you switch it to a real life biography with the help of obviously the main protagonist of their story, how that changed all the landscape for you as a writer?
Actually, I love it. I prefer it. I've been telling people, I think I've made my transition now to traditional book writing. One of the things I like about it is the freedom. The comic I put out right before the Bushwhackers book was actually a biography or an autobiography on Terry Funk. And one of the hardest parts about doing Terry's was that Terry, like Luke and Butch, had such an extensive career that covered so many years and covered so many different faces of Terry Funk. He portrayed so many different characters over those years. But with the comics format, I was very limited in what I could tell. I really had to cut it back and limit the stories to just, 2 or 3 here, but really cut them back. With Luke and Butch, the sky was the limit. I mean, we've got 372 pages of stories that go all the way back to them being born, back in the 40s up until their entry into the WWE Hall of Fame. So we had so much more freedom to really get in and tell stories and let people know things that they probably never heard. And on top of that, I've got over 25 guys that you might have seen the write-up on the book, over 25 guys throughout their careers, such as Hulk Hogan and Bret Hart and Diamond Dallas Page, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Rip Rogers, Brian Blair, Bobby Fulton, that goes on and on, Brian Knobs, guys that all contributed stories and quotes to the book. So it really allowed me in this type of a genre and traditional book writing to do so much more with it. And it was fun. I'm glad I made the jump.
Yeah, and that is really good because there's a lot of these wrestlers that are already retired, but they have, and now is more easy to find all this material, all these matches, all the specifics with all social media and the different platforms with the film attack of all the territories that even in Peacock or the network, or you can find it, the matches. If you read the book, you can find the match.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It make it a better experience for the reader. Like, this match got my attention, so I'm gonna go see it, and then I'm gonna continue reading the book.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, a big nod to Luke and Butch. These guys are walking encyclopedias. I mean, I'd sit there and talk. What we did is like this on a Wednesday night, every Wednesday night, just about for about a year and a half. The three of us would get on a chat like this, and I'd record it. And we just talk about their lives and their wrestling and their matches and different stories and things that happened. And we did that for about 3 hours every night for about a year and a half, every Wednesday night. And the memories that these guys have, and I think part of it is them just talking about it and recollecting as they went along. But be able to tell those stories, I'd record them as they went. And then to be able to put that into the book, do it with a writer's style. But I think when the readers pick this book up, you read it and it sounds as though you're talking to Luke and Butch because we've done it in their language. The way, because they have their own way of talking, as you know. So, you can kind of hear their humor. You can hear all of that in their words as you read the book.
Yeah, and that is a good part, that they have been part of the process of writing the book. From Puerto Rico, and if I'm interviewing you, I need to do some questions about Puerto Rico. The first time that you went Puerto Rico, at least what the information or the research that I did, was in 1981.
Correct.
And you have a huge feud over there, and that was your first experience in Puerto Rico, but that is in the beginning of the 80s, and the Puerto Rico territory began to get like hot and profiting on 85, and after 85, 84, 85. How was your first experience in Puerto Rico? Because I have information also that you even fought Carlos Colon on the Florida territory. That is something that is not seen like for the past 20 years, at least in the wrestling industry in Puerto Rico. So how was that first experience, and also having to fight the Puerto Rican star out of his island?
Okay, the first experience, this is a big one. We were told to come in the front entrance. We arrived on Thursday night. We arrived on a Friday night. Saturday night was TV in Ponce, and not a Ponce, in Caguas. Caguas is a wild place.
It always has been.
You've heard about the riots in Caguas, right?
Yeah.
So we were told to come in the front door. Carlos was doing an autograph signing for the fans, and we came in the front door with our bags, and we had a guy carrying them. We come in with a flagpole, we split it in half, and we beat him everywhere with the flagpole. It was steam pipe, heavy water steam pipe, the flag, and there was blood all over the walls, all over the walls. An ambulance come and carted Carlos away. So and then we went to the dressing room. By the time the show started, this was before the show, half an hour before the show, maybe an hour. By the time everybody came in the arena, the word had got around about these two guys from New Zealand. They'd never seen us before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They'd never seen us. And all of a sudden, the word had gone around the building to all the fans that Carlos was taken to the hospital. These two guys are maniacs. Okay, last match. The main event was Carlos and the Invader against the sheep herders, or Los Pastores. We go to the ring, and we're in the ring, and out comes the Invader, and blah blah blah. And the referee, the announcer says, "Get yourself a partner, and let's have this a match." And the Invader one says, "No, I'm going to, with respect to Carlos, I'm going to do it by myself and kick these two sheep herders or Los Pastores asses out of the building." The match started, and an Invader shined, he shined, and then we cut him off, and we got color, and we got him bleeding now. We hit him over the head with a steam pipe. We got him bleeding, and he's crawling around the ring, and all of a sudden, a fucking ambulance comes in the front door of the arena, and fucking Carlos comes out of the passenger side of the ambulance with a baseball bat and comes to the ring, and fucking bang, bang, bang. We get out of the butcher me, take about a shot each, maybe 2 shots each, and we get out of Dodge, back out of that. And that was our first appearance in for Capital Sport in Puerto Rico. And that was in Carlos. That was in Caguas. Now, Caguas there, the dressing rooms, they had to put blocks, concrete blocks, because the fans used to pee down in there, pee down on the wrestlers, the heels, and then there was the shooting. They shot down there. So they put the blocks so there's no more bullets could come into the dressing room. That's how wild it was in Caguas.
Yeah, Puerto Rico is very new for in the 80s being really wild against the heels specifically. But there's another feud of that is in your second run in Puerto Rico, specifically with the Invaders.
Yes.
And people got wild on that one in a way that 35, 40 years later is one of the most peak feuds in pro wrestling history in Puerto Rico. Is Los Pastores against the Invaders. It's one of the legendary tag team matches, specifically in the Puerto Rico in the Puerto Rico industry. Do you thought on that time that matches would last or eventually have a huge impact on what the industry is and was at that moment?
It had a big impact on our wrestling ability as the word got out to everybody about the Los Pastores sheep herders, how violent they were. There was always blood and guts in our matches. Carlos, what town did you come from in Puerto Rico?
I'm from Lajas.
Lajas, I know. I worked there.
Yeah, it's really close to Ponce.
Ponce, now that's what I want. That's where Michael is from. You know Michael?
I know Michael. My family is from Ponce.
That's in the Ponce, in that arena in Ponce, the fans got so mad that they ripped up a bank of seats. All the seats were bolted to the floor, like 4 seats and all bolted together. They ripped them up and they came down to the floor and threw them in the ring. That Ponce, many times the police had to come and get us out of the arena. That's how bad it was in Ponce. It was wild. Even as Michael's grandfather was going to shoot us. I don't know whether you know that story. He took a gun to the arena to shoot us.
Yeah, probably. I think that when we look back specifically me as a Puerto Rican, when we look back, you're one of the biggest heels in the history of the territory, because I think that nobody moved the audience the way that the way that you did it, because they actually hated you, because obviously you attack all the heroes, the Invaders, TNT, Savi, Carlos Colon, everybody was falling apart against the Los Pastores, so it was
Yeah.
huge. I have a question, but in another aspect of your career. You went to Puerto Rico eventually to work with IWA, but as a booker,
Yes.
I'm not wrong. And I remember it was Dutch Mantel too. I have a question because you were part of the success that IWA got in Puerto Rico. Like IWA was really huge, and probably in a moment that nobody expect that the wrestling industry in Puerto Rico would have that moment. What do you think that was primordial or important for that to happen? Because you were behind, obviously, and not as talent as much as you used to be, but more as a booker on that time. What do you think was the success, or what caused the success of IWA in that moment?
Well, Dutch Mantel had been there for 1 year, and he'd been building a story. Dutch Mantel is a soap opera man. You know, he watches soap operas, all kinds of soap operas, and he involves that in a storyline. And he'd been building the story and building it. And 2001, you know, Victor
Quiñones.
Quinones opened his territory in 2000. He come back from Japan. He'd been since 98, 99, and he'd been working for Vince Jr. as the booker for the Spanish and the Japanese. When they had that, you know, that 205 weight, what they called it, was the 205 or something, the weight thing. The junior heavyweights, he had a lot of them.
Lightweights, I think they used
to Jerry and all those guys, you know.
Yes.
And so he opened up the territory then, and there was a dojo for Japanese there too, and all of a sudden Dutch got this thing going, and he did the angle and that at a Christmas show, and the thing caught on fire, and I came in there as assistant booker. You know, or something happened with Dutch, and they had to get rid of him for about 3 months, and I came in and carried it on, and that the situation. Now we had two pieces of talent that were brand new to the business. We had Ricky Banderas, and we had Apollo. Apollo was about 260, a bodybuilder, 6'2", good looking, and then Ricky was the guy off a television show that Victor Quinones found on a comedy television show, and he got one of his friends to go and talk to him, and he got him to the gym and trained him. That's how Ricky Banderas started.
Ricky
Victor found him. Victor found him on it. Huh?
I have interviewed Ricky several times on this podcast.
Yeah, have you? Ricky, I talked to a lot. I'm the one that got him to go to Mexico. I said, you need to have a break in Puerto Rico. You know, him and Apollo they were our local baby faces, which were a big success in all the houses. You know, we had Shane, the American boy, had joined them, had joined Ricky Banderas and that, but they were the main two guys, Apollo and Ricky Banderas. And then, and of course, you needed to have a break because they'd been there every day for 4 or 5 years. That's what I said to them. You got to go, and I called AAA up and got them booked over there.
Well, after that, there's a story, and I'm gonna ask about this story. There's like a rumor, and I'm gonna ask the question because you are mentioned on that like urban legend in Puerto Rico wrestling. They said that on one tour they bring on Jeff Jarrett, and Jeff Jarrett like make an offer to Dutch and yourself to for more money to go to Impact, and that's why eventually like IWA got without any good booker, and that was especially the downfall, that it wasn't like immediately, but years later the company closed and it didn't open for also 8 years. Do you think that, first, is that true? And if it's true, what do you think that it was missing when you two left the company?
I didn't leave the company, mate. I never left. Dutch left. Dutch left in 2002.
Yeah.
In 2002, the company was good up to 2007. The company was running strong from 2002 to 2006. We still got another 4 or 5 year run out of that. We never built. This was one of my mistakes too. There was no one to build up like we'd build up Ricky Banderas and Apollo. You know, I should have taken a young kid, but there was no one who had that that X factor. You know what I mean? Those two had the X factor. But we got a good another after Dutch left, and that we got another 4 years run now. This is how Jeff Jarrett got television on a big TNA on television in the States. He came down with our baby face now, not Rick Martel. Who was the top baby face for Carlos for years?
For Carlos, I think that it was his son Carlitos was his.
No. The other guy, apart from the family.
Eddie, about for the family. They have Bronco.
Ray Gonzalez.
Ray Gonzalez, yeah.
So we got Ray Gonzalez over. We took Ray Gonzalez from Capital Sport and we got him with us. We're doing big houses, 5,000 every Saturday night. They're doing 500. Capital. Anyhow, we built up. Ray wanted to have a title match with Ric Flair for years and years and years, but it never happened. But all of a sudden, Jeff Jarrett is the NWA champion, and he's with TNA. Of course, it's his company. We bring him down. Now we do a big storyline, and we bring him down to Puerto Rico for a big show. Ray Gonzalez against Jeff Jarrett. The place is sold out, and Jeff brought his own TV guys down, and they taped his match in this park, and we had fire around the entrance. As soon as the people come out the entrance, the flames would come up. It was a spectacular event. He taped it all, and he went to a company in the States, and he used that footage, and they got major television. That's when they got their first, I forget the name of the company then, but it was a major cable network, and it was bought out by somebody else.
I think that is Spike TV was eventually.
That's Spike TV, yes. Yeah. And Spike TV was bought out by one of the major companies. That's when he got Spike. That was the footage. The footage from there is when he got Spike, and they changed their television. You know, our Total Impact was our television show. Total Impact, and they called it Impact too. They called their wrestling show Impact.
Yeah, I remember that IWA is the program is Impacto Total. That it means total impact.
So yes, now Jeff Jarrett went back and he called it Impact, the company, or their show Impact. And then they copied that footage that they got from there was used to help them. Spike saw that footage and said, "Shit," and that's how they got Spike TV.
Well, before we leave in and finishing this interview, this book, I think that with all that Lou have said, with all that John has said, I think there is a must buy for you. So please order the book through Amazon. It's The Bushwashers, Blood, Sweat and Shears. Para todos los que hablan en español, el libro lo pueden conseguir a través de Amazon, los Bushwashers o los pastores, como ustedes los conocen, Blood, Sweat and Tears. Lo pueden ordenar ya. For finishing up this interview, I asked John how it was the experience, but I haven't asked Luke how it was the experience of like resuming and making like all his life and all his career as a wrestler with more than 50 years, a booker, wrestler, Hall of Famer, into a book of 372 pages. How difficult was for you to like put all this story together with John and actually make it in a book?
Once Butch and me started talking, a lot of memories came back. A lot of stuff that we'd forgotten about. You know, like going way back to the days that we worked and wrestled against Peter Maivia in the 60s. You know, early 70s, Killer Kowalski, a guy that had been selling out Madison Square Garden in the 50s and 60s and 70s. He first sold it out in 59, and then here we are in the ring with him. These things, wrestling with Stu Hart, all this come back, and we put it all together. Once we started talking, hey, I might have forgotten stuff from a week ago, but coming back to 50 years and that, and it all started coming back, and it was great putting it all together. And the way John put it together and getting other people and other wrestling people of today, like Jake the Snake, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Hulk Hogan, and all those people to give us a little line in the book, it makes it very interesting. We've got plenty of little lines from a lot of, I think there's 25 different wrestlers that we got contacted with and got something in the book saying something good about us. And even if they said something bad about us, who the hell cares?
Well, I think that is an awesome closing for the interview. Thank you for the time and thank you for coming to this program. Los invito a que se suscriban al canal, denle campanita para notificaciones. Hasta la próxima, se cuidan. See you out.
Adios, amigos.
Thank you. Grab the book.
Bought it on Amazon. That is the book.
That's